Hey folks, do you hate feeling miserable the day after drinks? Well, same here. Luckily, I got a game-changing product called Z-Biotics, and it is here to help you. Z-Biotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking, and here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in your gut. It's this byproduct and not dehydration, like I always thought, that's to blame for your rough next day. Well, Z-Biotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic produces an enzyme. It breaks this byproduct down. It's designed to work like your liver, but it works in your gut where you need it most so you don't feel miserable the next day. All you got to do is you take one of these little Z-Biotics. It's about the size of this. You drink it before you drink alcohol. You drink responsibly. Try and get a good night's sleep, and you'll feel great the next day. Or you need to do a podcast. You need to go out and work out. Whatever it is, Z-Biotics got you covered. I actually went to one of the first Christmas parties I've been to in ages. Over the weekend, drank a Z-Biotic, had several drinks. Next morning, it was just like, I just felt like my normal self, which is not necessarily that great, but at least it's not that bad. Honestly, makes a huge difference. Allows me to do the show sometimes when I go out. I actually do a little bit of an exercise regimen, if you can believe it. And no longer is drinking a reason why I will skip it the next day.
Calf raises?
Exactly. It's all calf work. Go to zbiotics.com/majority. Get 15% off your first order when you use majority at checkout. You can also sign up for a subscription using my code so you can stay prepared no matter the time or occasion. Z-Biotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/majority. Use the code majority at checkout. You get 15% off. Thank you to Z-Biotics for sponsoring today's program and also for making my Sunday morning feel a lot better. And now it's time for the show.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
And I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Wednesday, December 13th, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Ari Tolany, research consultant for women for weapons trade transparency on the arming of Israel. Andi Dymond, theater and directing professor, member of the contract bargaining team for the Columbia College Chicago Faculty Union, part of the largest adjunct strike in U.S. history. Meanwhile, Supreme Court to decide on access to the abortion drug mifepristone. And as the UN General Assembly calls for a ceasefire, Biden concedes Israel is losing its support. I should say is losing support over its war. New Mexico Supreme Court weighing whether local restrictions on choice conflict with state law. And the New York Supreme Court okays Democratic redistricting. In Alabama, prisoners sue over the prison labor system. Microsoft pledges neutrality in its union campaign, which means that there could be 100,000 tech workers who will at least get a clean shot at deciding to unionize. COP28 comes to a compromise calling for a transition away from fossil fuels. Are we still there? Still there at transition? Florida fines a high school for allowing a trans girl to play volleyball. Tesla recalls 2 million vehicles, almost all of the cars they've sold in America, over just the autopilot safety.
Is that important?
Argentina begins Milei's shock economics. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Let me get this out of the way right now. Got some throat issues happening. It is, I've got a sore throat. I have tested. We have been, we were all masked up in here prior to this moment. Bradley and Matt are masked up at the moment. And we've got our air filters on.
I'm trying to figure out who you sound like. It's not Dennis Leary, but it's like someone in that realm.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of... I'm taking a lot of grief. If it makes you feel any better, I actually feel probably worse than I sound. My throat hurts. I'm not going to lie. But yeah, it's, now we've all said it. I don't need to get any more IMs. Trying to do the intro of the show, and Matt and Bradley are just giggling over there at the way that people are IMing.
The chat rate is through the roof right now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we'll probably get good numbers on this show just because of the feedback of my voice. We'll kick in the algorithm. It is Hump Day. Emma is... Tush Push says, Sam, your voice sounds normal for a change. It is Hump Day. Emma is out today. And we got a lot to get to. Among other things, today was the day that Hunter Biden was, and we will get to, I should just say before this, we will get to there are reports coming out of the White House. It's not even a report, really. There is a specific release of comments that were made in the White House. There were no cameras allowed or recording devices, but the official White House record was released, and it is Biden, and maybe a little bit later we'll read the document, but Biden's basically talking about Israel and his close relationship with Bibi Netanyahu over the past 50 years, and how Bibi is really put upon by the Biden doesn't use this word, but he sort of walks close to it, the fascists in Netanyahu's government. I don't know if there's ever been a better example of what happens when you form your politics 50 years before you're in a position to actually implement them, and have dipped those politics in, in I don't know, some type of like
the thing from Jurassic Park that like kept the DNA for all those
exactly
years.
Some type of cryogenic frozen time capsule, and it's as if he's had no access to any other outside sources since the first day he met Bibi Netanyahu 50 years ago. I mean, all you need to do is read Netanyahu's biography. And you can see what a nut job this guy's been, from claiming that he wanted to attack America based upon our response to the massacres in refugee camps in Lebanon, that Ariel Sharon essentially waved militia into these refugee camps and there were massacres committed. To Netanyahu's racist diatribes, not just about Arabs, but about Israelis who were not white. On and on and on. To understand, who Bibi Netanyahu is and what is driving this. And as if he had no sense of, that somehow these 700,000 settlers, illegal settlers in the West Bank just sort of appeared as if they just dropped out of thin air, as opposed to it being a strategy to really take us to this very point. As if Biden had never had access to the knowledge that Netanyahu was not only supportive of Hamas, but that was part of the plan to make sure that there could never be a cohesive Palestinian leadership for a one state or a two state, for that matter, solution.
Unless the only state Palestinians can get is a statelet that's basically dominated by Israel.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there'll be like a Puerto Rico type of situation, just a protectorate. And it really is. It's fascinating and disturbing. But we will get to that later in the program. First, today was the day that Hunter Biden, the deadline for Hunter Biden to comply with a subpoena to be deposed behind closed doors by Congress. Now, I believe that when you are subpoenaed by Congress, even if you don't want to go, even if you know that the Republicans are going to try and selectively leak what you say behind closed doors to make you look bad, you got to go, because it sets a bad precedent that Congress can't subpoena people. Now, we've seen this we've seen many Republicans refuse to comply with subpoenas. That doesn't necessarily justify, in my mind, Biden doing that. However, Hunter Biden went to the press because he's also offered to testify in public, and because of this dynamic. And here he is on the Capitol steps speaking to the press earlier this morning.
James Comer, Jim Jordan, Jason Smith, and their colleagues have distorted the facts by cherry-picking lines from a bank statement, manipulating texts I sent, editing the testimony of my friends and former business partners, and misstating personal information that was stolen from me. There is no fairness or decency in what these Republicans are doing. They have lied over and over about every aspect of my personal and professional life. So much so that their lies have become the false facts believed by too many people. No matter how many times it is debunked, they continue to insist that my father's support of Ukraine against Russia is the result of a non-existent bribe. They displayed naked photos of me during an oversight hearing. And they have taken the light of my dad's love, for me, and presented it as darkness. They have no shame. These same committee chairmen have engaged in unprecedented political interference in what would have already been a 5-year investigation of me. Yet, here I am, Mr. Chairman, taking up your offer when you said we can bring these people in for depositions or committee hearings, whichever they choose. Well, I've chosen I am here to testify at a public hearing today to answer any of the committee's legitimate questions. Republicans do not want an open process where Americans can see their tactics, expose their baseless inquiry, or hear what I have to say. What are they afraid of? I'm here. I'm ready.
I mean, I'm not even sure necessarily. I guess this is just for, Democrats who might think that somehow there's something to this investigation. Because it's very hard to not hear these things over and over again and not assume there must be something here. There's no way these people would pursue this relentlessly if there was really nothing. But the fact is, yes, they would. We had, 8 hearings on Benghazi? Do people remember that?
Yeah. That's like the main activity of Republicans in Congress, is to follow up.
And we have other clips of James Comer, who's now doing a media tour to talk about other media tours he's done. Like literally going on other shows to talk about how he won't go on Fox and Friends anymore because there's skeptics there. Or he won't go on CNN because there's skeptics there. It's fascinating. But Biden did, I think, essentially what he could do, at the very least, he put the spotlight on the Republicans who refused to have him testify publicly. I still think that when you're subpoenaed by Congress, you've got to go. But I would just come right out the next moment and release the transcript yourself. I don't know how you go about doing that, but I imagine there's got to be a mechanism in which you could go in. We'll do this, but we want a recording, and we're going to release it. We won't include any of your questions, just what I say. In a minute, we're going to be talking to Ari Tolany, research consultant for Women for Weapons Trade Transparency. New story out in these Times magazine about how Israel got an endless supply of U.S.-made smart bombs, and the end around essentially that has been going on around Congress to provide Israel with a seemingly unlimited amount of weapons with absolutely no conditions associated with them whatsoever, other than like a stern warning about civilian casualties. We'll get to Ari in a moment. And then later, Andi Dymond, there's a strike going on at Columbia College in Chicago. The DP of everything I ever shot, I think. I think mostly all of like the TV shows and the movies I shot was teaching there. I don't know if he still is teaching there, but there's the longest adjunct professor strike in U.S. history, or so I'm told. We will check with Andy about that. But first, a couple of words from our sponsors. What do you call a person who speaks 3 languages?
Bilingual.
3?
Oh, 3 trilingual.
Right. You're thinking of 2 is bilingual.
Yeah, I couldn't even comprehend someone knowing 3 languages.
What do you call someone who speaks 1 language?
Lingual.
No, American. Only 22% of Americans speak a language other than English at home. Folks, you can start learning a new language this winter, and be the exception, not the rule. Because with Babbel, you start speaking a new language in just 3 weeks. Start the new year off right. Make yourself feel good about learning something. Babbel's courses help you learn real-life conversation skills, so it's easy to pick up on how to order food, ask for directions, admonish your children, speak to merchants, without having to consult language apps, while on vacation or anything like that. This holiday season, you can start speaking a new language with Babbel. Why Babbel? Because it works. Instead of paying hundreds of dollars for a private tutor or fooling yourself with language apps that are little more than games, Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are designed by over 150 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little, again, as 3 weeks. And this is the beauty about those 10-minute lessons. You can do them as you walk to work. You can do them as you wait for your kid to finish his ninja class, for instance. As you're sitting there, pretending like you're watching. Babbel is designed by real people for real conversations. All of Babbel's tips and tools for learning a new language are approachable, they're accessible, and they are rooted in real-life situations. So you use this stuff quick, and it's all conversation-based teaching. Babbel's having a special, and it's limited, deal for our listeners to get you started right now. You get 55% off your Babbel subscription at babbel.com/majority. Only at that site. 55% off at babbel.com/majority. That's spelled B-A-B-B-E-L. Babbel, BABBEL.com/majority. Rules and restrictions may apply. We'll put the link in the YouTube and podcast description. I could use some of these right now, but this time of year, obviously, folks are looking for all sorts of sundries. Is that what it is? Sundries is like all this type of like. Well, you can't go to Willy Wonka's candy factory, but let me introduce you to the online version of that, nuts.com. Not only do they have like an amazing selection of nuts, mixed nuts and cashews and almonds and candied pecans, pecans, but they also have tons of like classic candies like butterscotch and fudge and licorice. First off, I want to thank nuts.com for both sponsoring the show and being our number one go-to when Emma's eating her cashews or I'm eating my almonds, or sometimes her cashews. Right now, when you go to nuts.com/majority, new customers get a free gift with a purchase and free shipping on orders of $29 or more. Nuts.com is your one-stop shop. You get roasted nuts, you can get dried fruit, you get like candy and sweets. You can also get things like pantry staples like flours and stuff like that, cooking stuff. They have a wide selection. There's something for everyone there at nuts.com. Quality is the top priority. They roast their nuts and pop their corn the same day they ship it to you. So it's incredibly fresh by the time you get it. Satisfaction is guaranteed. I've gone through many bags now of nuts.com. In fact, I've just noticed. I think we're out.
On nuts.
Yeah, no kidding. They're delicious. And there's a huge selection of stuff there. They've got gluten-free options. They've got organic choices. They've got other diet-friendly stuff. Doesn't matter whether you're looking for something sweet. Doesn't matter if you're looking for something salty or savory, or you need to stock up on cooking essentials. Nuts.com is the place you got to go. You can shop a la carte anytime, or you can get auto deliveries, which is what we should have done with the nuts here. So you never run out of your favorite items. They also sell directly to businesses. Right now, nuts.com offering new customers a free gift with purchase and free shipping on orders of $29 or more at nuts.com/majority. Go check out all the delicious options at nuts.com/majority. You're going to get a free gift and free shipping when you spend $29 or more. Link, as always, in the podcast and YouTube descriptions. Quick break. And when we come back, Ari Tolany, research consultant for Women for Weapons Trade Transparency. We'll be right back. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Emma Vigeland out today. Joining me now, Ari Tolany, research consultant for Women for Weapons Trade Transparency. Ari, did I say your name, your last name correctly?
Yes, you did.
Okay. Well, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us. Saw this piece that you contributed to with Lillian Malden and Janet Abu Elias in these times, talking about the how Israel got an endless supply of U.S.-made smart bombs. That's really sort of the beginning of the story in many respects. But walk us through this. I think there's this perception that there are specific numbers of weapons that are sold at a specific time, and that's it, and there's a cap on it, and anything else that has to happen through Congress. But a couple of years ago, there was basically, I don't know, an open door policy that was sort of written into the legislation. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so to understand this precision-guided munitions stockpiling, we really need to start with understanding the war reserves that Israel has kind of a unique access to. So the United States all around the world positions stockpiles of materiel in the event that a conflict goes hot, so that in theory it can be drawn upon quickly. In 1984, the first of those stockpiles was established in Israel. You may recall that was when Reagan was pulling troops out of Lebanon and trying to create some kind of security guarantee there. Moving on, those stockpiles have become a kind of rich reserve for Israel to draw on particular kinds of munitions with very little congressional oversight and often very little executive level oversight. So in the 2006 war and the 2014 war against Lebanon, Israel drew a pretty heavy amount of munitions from the stockpile, but we really do not have a very strong accounting of what is in that stockpile or what the sort of thresholds are. If the U.S. has contributed the maximum amount it has been allowed to for the past several years, we can expect that that's a stockpile of roughly 4.4 billion USD weapons, in weapons not adjusted for inflation. And so the precision-guided munitions, which are a particularly deadly and dangerous form of weapon, are one of Israel's sort of first lines of defense that it really heavily relies on when it is engaging with Hamas or other groups.
So in terms of these stockpiles, like, are they just, I mean, whose are they? In other words, like, are they U.S. weapons that we're, I don't know, like renting warehouses in somewhere in Israel and saying, can we just leave these here? Or are they earmarked for Israel? Like who owns these? And then, and if we own them, how do the Israelis just go in and take them as if it's like some type of, I don't know, stock room?
So there's the theory of what happens, and then there's the practice of what happens, right? So in theory, these are U.S. weapons reserves. We actually pulled on stockpiles in Israel to refuel tanks and supply Ukraine with munitions. So these are U.S. munitions. However, in practice, and particularly with a special relationship like Israel, the partner country is allowed to essentially pull without limit from the war reserve stockpile. And that's not something that was just happened overnight. This is something that was steadily built into legislation. And so when you look at this year's National Defense Authorization Act, which is about to be passed, as well as the supplemental funding request, those include a suite of provisions related to that stockpile, including getting rid of all caps. So in theory, the U.S. is supposed to only transfer up to 200 million into the Israeli stockpile. That is getting rid of that completely. Getting rid of all congressional notification or any form of notification of Israel going in and hauling out weapons. And also, historically, those weapons that were put in or purchased were meant to be provided at fair market value. And the supplemental has changed that, which again has not passed yet, and we don't know if it's going to pass. But the supplemental has changed that fair market value to any value determined by the Secretary of Defense, meaning we can essentially give the Israelis incredibly cheap, highly dangerous weapons, circumventing the traditional congressional oversight that the Arms Export Control Act established.
So does that, so if we've got $4 billion worth of weapons that are stored there in this sort of like just stock room, as it were, does those only count towards whatever, the $3 billion annual that we provide for Israel? Or ostensibly this $14 billion supplemental, if it passes, they only count at this point, if this supplemental passes, as much as the Secretary of Defense decides that they're going to count, right? I mean, if these are like low cost, expensive weapons, they won't count against that. But what about up to this point? Like, have they been dipping into these stockrooms, or we just don't know? And what's the accounting? Like, do they have a credit, or is this just something we're going to owe you this in the future, and maybe future funds that we get will be applied against this?
So this has been a big concern for Women for Weapons Trade Transparency, because for the public and sort of for research analysts on the outside, it is very difficult to tell what is going on. What I will say is that it is unlike the United States and Israel to have a provision like this and not use it. So in past NDAAs, after the 2014 war in Gaza, Israel asked for a lot more access to PGMs. And then in the fiscal year 2021 National Defense Authorization Act, they received this limitless PGM hack, essentially, where they can withdraw any PGMs from that stockpile without having to refer to the annual notification limits.
And PGM?
Sorry. A PGM is a precision-guided munition, which has been sort of the bulk of Israel's, it's been Israel's weapon of choice in the bombardment of Gaza. In the first 2 weeks after October 7th, Israel dropped about 90% of its bombs, which were 1,000 to 2,000 pound satellite-guided bombs. The Washington Post just reported from some leaked intelligence that 22,000 U.S. bombs have been used in Gaza, and that we have transferred another 15,000 bombs and 50,000 rounds of 155 millimeter artillery shells.
And so when we say 22,000 U.S. bombs, we're not even talking about bombs that were built in the U.S. and sold to the Israelis. We're talking about just our bombs that they basically used, as if like we left our car in their driveway and said, use it whenever you want, essentially.
So some of those bombs likely came from the War Reserve stockpile. Some of them likely came from congressional notified sales. There's sort of a lot of different pipelines where weapons are coming from. And in the case of Israel and some other countries, that reporting is deliberately opaque in being able to determine what munitions have been sent, their value, and where.
Now, the notion of PGMs, ostensibly, when we as a country have sort of justified the sales and the open door policy to them using them, it's because it's going to reduce civilian casualties, because they're so precise that you wouldn't have indiscriminate bombing. Will you just speak to that a little bit? Because, and I guess I sort of had a notion of this, but as of the writing of this piece, which was 9 days ago, there were 98,000 buildings in Gaza that had been destroyed. Yeah. And, obviously, we're now, close to 20,000 dead in Gaza. And you would imagine, over the past 10 days, there's been continued bombing. So probably hundreds, if not thousands, more buildings. But with every one of these buildings, there's a chance, obviously, there's dead people underneath them. It is astonishing. And it sort of seems to, what does it say about this concept of precision-guided munitions that are ostensibly used to save civilian lives? It sounds more like they're just able to target, maybe they're able to target journalists or doctors or activists, more readily. But what's happening from your perspective with these?
Yeah, so precision-guided munitions, so those directed bombs, often guided by a satellite, have been often billed, particularly by the Biden administration, as a way to reduce collateral damage and civilian harm. In a case like what we are seeing right now in Palestine, however, when we are seeing PGM fragments and US-made PGM fragments in the wake of strikes on refugee camps in the case of Jabalia, or under the evacuation line in South Gaza, it is very clear that these are being used with devastating effect on civilian infrastructure. And the US has tacitly acknowledged in the past that in the hands of a military without the capacity or the political will to protect civilians, precision-guided munitions will be particularly deadly. So in 2016, for example, lawyers within the State Department warned the Obama administration that its staffers could be held accountable for war crimes because of the precision-guided munitions that had been supplied to the Saudi-led air campaign in Yemen. And that was the first impetus to initially stopping precision-guided munitions as the first sort of sales that went through to Saudi. So the Biden administration knows very well the impact and effect that precision-guided munitions have in the hands of a military who has been abundantly clear that it does not adhere to either proportionality or distinction norms.
I want to slow down with this in terms of the Yemen example, because it seems to me that this may be a model to be replicated. I mean, we've heard U.S. government officials say they're supposedly in late November they're no longer discriminately bombing, which implies that the U.S. knew that they were indiscriminately bombing with these precision-guided missiles, and claiming that they're no longer doing it. I mean, I think there's that's arguable, but at the very least, if I'm looking at this as a legalistic matter, it certainly indicates that there was an awareness this was going on, and there doesn't seem to be a response. We'll just walk us through a little bit about this with Yemen, because we were providing supposedly defensive weaponry for Saudi Arabia, is my understanding, and ostensibly to have some type of constructive engagement so that we could convince them to pull back more, which also was either just a farce of an excuse or very ineffective. The OLC, is that what you're saying? The Department of Justice said you could
state law, so legal lawyers within state.
Okay, and so do we know if lawyers within state have had a look at what's going on in Gaza and had any response?
I do not have any insight into what State L is talking about. I would be very surprised if there was somebody who was not looking into this right now, particularly given the history of the Saudi example and the extent to which the United States has trained and equipped what most legal experts are saying amounts to ethnic cleansing in the Gaza Strip. So the bombs that Israel is dropping are really big. They're 1,000 to 2,000 pounds. When one of these drops, the ground basically turns into soup. And so for context, the heaviest bombs that were dropped in the U.S. campaign to liberate Mosul and Raqqa from ISIS were 500 pounds. And their use was extremely controversial among targeting experts because it was just too big. For someplace like Gaza to be repeatedly dropping bombs of this size and scale is devastating, and there's absolutely no way it could be done in any way that is adhering with the law of armed conflicts principles of both proportionality and distinction, so making every effort to distinguish between combatant and non-combatants.
And how much in that calculation, how much does the fact that Gaza is one of the most densely populated, the most densely populated places on Earth, how does that factor in? Like, is there an algorithm when someone is looking at this from a legal standpoint?
There's not an algorithm I'm aware that lawyers use. I am aware that 972, an Israeli magazine, did a good deal of reporting on artificial intelligence algorithms, which were being used to calculate the level of, quote, collateral damage that would be coming from each strikes. And there is concern even within the Israeli targeting apparatus that the response has been disproportionate.
What else can you tell us about the way that that shipments are going there? So they have a basically an open door policy to a stockroom full of weapons that is that seemingly seems to be out of the reach of both congressional oversight and even the executive administration oversight, because there's already a sort of like you've got a coupon for as much as you want, sort of shopping spree. Are there other mechanisms that the administration is using to sort of cloud the transparency in terms of what kind of weaponry we're providing for Israel?
Yeah, so first I will note which the National Defense Authorization Act, which is supposed to be passed soon, has extended this waiver on precision-guided munitions. so that the sort of blank check and lack of transparency can continue for another 3 years. To your point, there is also an amendment that appears to be trying to get a stock or a handle of what is actually still in the war reserve stockpile for Israel and the amount of precision-guided munitions, just for sort of an accounting purpose, because that is something which has been sorely lacking in the past. But we're seeing a lot of mechanisms used. So, for example, in theory, there is something called an emergency waiver under the Arms Export Control Act, where if the secretary or the president acting through the Secretary of State certifies that something is truly an emergency, normal transparency and congressional oversight measures can be bypassed. And they just did this, the Biden administration just did this with a series of tank shells that are going to be sent to Israel. So that's some of that 122 and 155 millimeter artillery that's going to be used in tank assaults, and presumably in Gaza. There have also been 15,000 bombs and 50,000 other forms of bombs, 50,000 artillery shells, 15,000 bombs transferred, notwithstanding that war stockpile transfer. So there is just a ton of weapons flowing from a ton of different areas and with a ton of different authorizations.
And just to be clear, all of these open spigots are spigots that could theoretically be closed, right? I mean,
correct.
in terms of like leverage, if there was, the argument that we don't have any leverage here, these spigots can be closed, I would imagine, with a phone call.
That is correct. And I would also point out that it is U.S. law would seem to require that. So Section 502B of the Foreign Assistance Act prohibits U.S. security assistance from going to states which are engaged in a consistent pattern of gross violations of international human rights. The targeting that we have seen the Israelis engage in and the probable war crimes certainly rise to that level. Section 620I of the Foreign Assistance Act says that no assistance shall go to a government that prohibits the access of U.S. humanitarian aid, which Israel seems to be certainly doing in Gaza. And the Biden administration's own conventional arms transfer policy set forth a more likely than not standard, which said that arms should not be contributed to a country if it is more likely than not that they will be used by the recipient to commit, facilitate, or aggravate the risk of genocide, crimes against humanity, or grave breaches of the 1949 Geneva Conventions.
How are these standards that you've laid out in these three different statutes, how are they assessed? I mean, does the statutes call for some type of mechanism to make these assessments, or is it out of state, or is it just sort of we make them as we go along?
Yeah, so there's two separate things here. One is the policy, which is non-binding, which the Biden administration's been saying a lot because they are not adhering to their own policy in transfers to Israel. Then there is the law, which in theory requires a certification from the president acting through the Secretary of State to Congress, essentially explaining what's going on, what munitions are being sent, what national emergency conditions are met. To my knowledge, that has not happened. It is possible that that went through in some sort of classified setting and did not get a lot of pushback in Congress. But to my knowledge, we have not seen that happen yet.
Do we have any other these stores, essentially, and these type of channels for any other countries, any of our other allies?
We do. So we have war stockpile reserves positioned in the Indo-Pacific theater, mostly in South Korea, and I believe as well some in Eastern Europe now. But the levels of arms that are allowed to flow to them and the level of notification that is required for different allies to procure stocks from those stockpiles is different. And Israel has essentially had every loophole and cover over the years built into its use of this stockpile in a way that, to my knowledge, has not yet occurred with other allies.
Really disturbing story. And I mean, I imagine at one point there's going to be some type of reckoning, or maybe I imagine there won't be. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking there should be.
The International Criminal Court has referred this situation for initial hearings. So we will see in the spring the assessments that the International Court makes, particularly because, you know, the U.S. and Israel are not party to some aspects of the Geneva Conventions, but right. Palestine is. And so because it is being committed in the occupied Palestinian territories, probable war crimes are being committed in the occupied Palestinian territories. There's a sense that there could be further investigation and hopefully some form of accountability.
to your knowledge, has anybody asked? Have any reporters asked the State Department legal corps or whatever the division of the State Department if they have made any type of assessment like they did or begun assessing like they did with in regards to Yemen during the Obama administration?
A question was asked by a reporter yesterday, and I'm sorry, I do not remember her name, if they were making that determination. And they said that we have made no determination as of yet. So that means that something could be ongoing and they don't want to talk about it, or it means that they don't want to look into it because often the purpose of executive department lawyers or executive branch lawyers is to preserve maximum policy flexibility for the president. So even though in theory there are these legal provisions that should be in effect, it is many of their jobs to find ways to find loopholes, maintain loopholes, certify emergency conditions, et cetera. That is the culture of executive branch lawyering.
Yes, I still remember John, was it Yu?
Oh, yes.
And torture.
Torture memos. He's still very successful in the field, by the way.
Yes, I think he's teaching at Stanford, isn't it? Is it at Stanford? Ari Tolany, Tolany, research consultant for Women for Weapons Trade Transparency. Thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. We'll put a link to that piece and to your organization in our podcast and YouTube descriptions.
Thanks so much.
Okay, folks, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Andi Dymond, theater and directing professor, member of the contract bargaining team for the Columbia College Chicago Faculty Union. Part of what my understanding is, and we'll ask Andi, the longest running adjunct professor strike, maybe in U.S. history. We'll be right back after this.
You as a Berkeley, by the way, just to.
Oh, you as at Berkeley?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Apologies, Stanford. Berkeley, shame on you. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Emma Vigeland off today. Joining me now, Andi Dymond, theater and directing professor, member of the contract bargaining team for the Columbia College Chicago Faculty Union. Welcome to the program, Andi.
Thank you.
And we should be clear. Tell us about Columbia College, not to be confused with Columbia University in New York.
Right.
This is more geared towards theater and film production, and tell us about it.
It's a media and arts college, and it has Chicago in its name. It's a very Chicago kind of place, full of working professionals. Students come there to work with the people who will become their colleagues. We teach there to work at bringing people into the field with us. So many people become assistants and become connected to other folks in the fields that they're pursuing through their professors.
And there has been what has been reported, and maybe you can tell me if this is the case. The longest strike of adjuncts in U.S. labor history. Is that your understanding as well?
That's my understanding. The new school last year went, I want to say, 22 days. We're 44 days now, I think, or maybe a little more. 7th week.
All right. So tell us about who's on strike and why.
Well, this is the adjunct faculty at Columbia College. We are about 72% of the faculty there. Columbia College was founded by part-time working professionals. We're on strike because some unilateral changes were made by the administration with no input from anyone that will affect the quality of the education that we can offer our students. That's the basics of it.
All right, and we should say 72% adjuncts because, like you say, these are all your professors are working professionals who their students are going to be working alongside with once they graduate and go out there. And so, how much of this is like? Get more specific with those sort of like the failure of the college to provide for the students. And also the question of pay, because pay seems to be secondary in some respect, which is also shocking because I also know adjunct professors are severely underpaid.
Yes, if it were about pay, as one of my colleagues said, we wouldn't be on strike. I mean, it's really about what we can do in the classroom. We are in negotiation for our next contract, and we had been in negotiation for several months, and 2 weeks before the term began, a directive came down from the provost that they would cut 50 some courses in that current fall semester that was starting in 2 weeks, and then 300, and I want to say 317 in the spring quarter or semester that would be following. And they would also raise class sizes, and that they did all of this, and it's an unfair labor practice, which we filed immediately. And that's why we're on strike, because they are unwilling to talk with us at all about what it is they're doing and how it affects the quality of the education of our students. There are courses that cannot be taught if you can only spend 5 minutes with a kid. You can't give them the one-on-one that they come there to get. Not to mention other types of courses where they say, well, this isn't a studio course. We can put 80 people in there. Well, no, we really can't, because then that professor has to, deal with 80 students. You can't spend any time with them to help them through their work. And the most egregious thing is not only that they did it without any notification or any input from anyone, but that they're unwilling to use any criteria for the course cuts that they made. And then also they're saying they're doing this to help their financial crisis, which they then a few weeks later said, oh, we're financially sound. But obviously, as you say, we don't get paid much, so they can't really be helping their financial crisis on our backs. It's really about crushing the union, which is what we have come to learn.
Okay. All right. So I want to back up a little bit here because, again, because of the nature of the education that you all are providing, it is very much hands-on and very much about critiquing and learning from doing, as opposed to here's, you're reading 50 pages in this textbook tonight, and then come back in and tell me how to, light a scene or whatnot. Talk about why the cutting of these classes is an assault on the union. And we should say that my understanding is that there has been half a dozen unfair labor practice violations that you have, that your union has filed with the National Labor Relations Board. Is it half a dozen? Maybe it's 7, I see.
It's 7, and it was more, but we started to combine some of them. But yes, every day it seems that there's something else they do that is an unfair labor practice, including most recently what has amounted to a lockout, which because we are having an unfair labor practice strike, they cannot do. That is unlawful. So that's another charge.
All right. So what is, when they're cutting these classes, we should say the president and CEO of Columbia College received a bonus of $300,000. Correct me if I'm wrong, in 2021. On top of a salary of $800,000, and over $600,000 in additional compensation were given to 14 other executive positions in 2021 tax documents. That is a very weird system if you are on the brink of having to cut back significant percentage of your classes. One wonders what the bonus is for.
Seriously.
Why do you conclude that their cutting of these classes, which is going to make it that much harder to teach the students who do go there, why do you conclude that is ultimately about an assault on the union?
Because what it would amount to is about 2/3 of our unit being without courses. And they have, as I said, we're also engaged in bargaining overall for our next contract. And one of the things, we're a union, so there is a seniority, there is seniority. But there's also, in terms of who gets offered things first, that sort of thing. But for full-time gets offered things first anyway. And then we get offered however many courses. And generally it's been somewhere between 60 some odd percent and 70, depending on the year. And what it would do is cut about 2/3 of our people. And one of the things that we were trying to do was protect some of that work. We are a union. Not only because we think it's important for the students to have these courses, but because you can't just, in this school, traditionally you can't just say, and none of you people will be working. And what they've tried to say is, well, first of all, they said, sure, we'll protect X amount of courses, but only for your very top tier. You have to let everyone else go. And we're like, again, we are a union. That makes no sense. We understand that we can't give everyone the same protection, but we know that we can't just sacrifice 2/3 of our unit. Who would do that? Obviously, some corporate people would, but we would not. And they resisted any change in that. And most recently went back to that, though we had gotten them to move off it a little bit. Why do I say they're trying to crush union? Because they are unwilling to come off of any of that. And they want to say that we're trying to get tenure-like protections for our faculty, which is not true. It's not for any single person. It's to say that we will get a percentage of the work. We have also said if enrollment drops, we're willing to drop that. We're willing to put that in the contract. If enrollment goes up, we should get more protections. They're unwilling to have any conversation around that. And in fact, when we've come close at all, they've just said, no, we're not. We think that's wrong and that you should have no right to any protections, which makes
How are the
sense.
students reacting? I mean, I would imagine that if I was an incoming freshman and I was going to hear that, I'm not sure what percentage of those classes are getting axed, but if I was going to have a lot less sort of like time with the camera, time with access to a working DP, access to a working director or set designer or whatever it is, who are going to be able to show me, impart their knowledge of the business to me, I'm going to be pissed.
Yes, students are upset, they're angry, they're hurt, because the college is not showing any real care for them. And now after, this 5 weeks without any courses at all for many, many students. And then putting in scabs, putting in full-timers who are doing things that have nothing to do with their course, but just so that the college can say that they are protecting the progress, the academic progress of the student, meaning they're going to pass them, regardless of whether or not they're getting an education, particularly the education they came for. I have students who are, they're furious. Like, what can I do? We have students talking about suing, their parents talking about suing. But more than that, we are, we see each other on the picket line and they're sad. We have relationships with these students. We have supported them in their growth as, to become the artists and the artisans and the crafts people that they want to become. And they have people who are, they're like, this guy, they've said, no idea. They have no idea. They don't do this work anywhere. And so they're pretty upset.
I got to imagine a school like this too. And just based on my own experience, the idea of like, everything's fine. I passed this class is largely irrelevant because, I didn't ask my DP back in the day, like, what were your grades? That's not. I'm looking at the work they've produced, and that's a function of what they learned when they were trained in school, essentially.
And that's an accreditation issue potentially, we think, because they are saying they have sent out some departments have sent out things like, we are going to do 4 workshops. If you attend 4 of them, you're eligible for an A. If you attend 3, you're eligible for a B. And they will be workshops that the students are, what? I was teaching and directing one course this semester, And sadly, the brand new chair of the theater department is scabbing my course, and he's turned it into a devising course. Well, that is not what those students came for. When I saw them, I said, well, are you working on your scenes? And one of my students, God love him, said, no, we're not doing that. That's your work. It's like, okay. But I saw one of those students yesterday, and she said, I'm not, this has got nothing to do with what I'm doing. Why should I even go? And many students are going because their grades are threatened. You know, they don't want to fail. They want to lose their credits, their money.
Right. What can folks around Chicago and, you know, even nationally, what can they do to support your union?
Well, I mean, a couple of different things. They certainly can write to the college, the provost, the president. They can also support. There's so many people who've been out of work now for 8 weeks, and we're not, God love the UAW, but we don't have that kind of strike fund. We have, they are welcome to, if they can, if anyone can, particularly this holiday time, help with our strike fund. That would be huge for people that we're trying to make sure can pay their rent and pay their own kids' college tuition, et cetera, that kind of thing.
Where can people access that strike fund?
It's a GoFundMe. So Columbia College Faculty, CFAC, CFAC.
All right. Well, we're going to put a link to that in our podcast and YouTube description. And we'll also find maybe some emails for the college. And I know that we have a lot of people who have, you know, juniors and seniors in high school, parents. And, you know, people are watching to see what direction the school is going to take, because it's a great school for if you're going to get involved and really want to work in those industries. But if you're not going to have access to people who know what it's like to work in those industries, I'm not quite sure what the point is. You might as well just take some type of YouTube class,
as people will do, I guess. I don't know, but it's also part of a much larger challenge to higher education here in this country. Administrators are making all the money. Professors, teachers are being pushed. You know, their classes are getting larger. They're losing jobs, and this is the thing. Yeah, there are people who still have tenure, but they have to know they're next. If other faculty can be, you know, crushed and pushed out of the way because of the corporatization of education everywhere, not just at Columbia College. And so I think that's a huge concern. It should be a huge concern for all of us.
I think you're absolutely right. Andi Dymond, theater directing professor, member of the contract bargaining team for the Columbia College Chicago Faculty Union. We will put all those links in the podcast and YouTube description. Thanks so much. Good luck. I hope you guys prevail.
Thank you so much for your time. Okay. Take care.
All right, folks. We're going to take a quick break, head into the fun half of the program. I'm going to try and do a little bit of work on my voice, and we'll see how long I last in the fun half today. Just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you help the show survive and thrive, and allow us to do stuff that is not always the sexiest of stuff, but we hopefully providing you with information that you can't find other places. And then you also get the fun half of the program, and you get the free half commercial free, but you also get the fun half. Then you can IM us in the fun half and have fun in the fun half. It's fun, the fun half. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, and featuring the Majority Report blend. And if you use the coupon code Majority, you get 10% off. Makes for a great gift. Antonin Scalia's Ghost says workers' rights are always sexy. Bradley, what's happening on ESPN?
On Monday, we broke down Week 14 of NFL action. Talked about some of the refereeing controversy, some of the quarterbacking injuries, and some of the playoff picture coming into focus before the end of the season. And then tomorrow at 4 p.m., we'll have ESPN OT to give our picks against our top 3 picks against the spread going into Week 15. YouTube.com/ESPN show for more to catch up on the streams and some clips if you'd like it before tomorrow.
Matt, Left Reckoning.
Yeah, last night on Left Reckoning, we had Aina Mohammed Smith talking about the IDW and increasingly ecclesiastical turn that a lot of the people are making. Not only Dave Rubin and Brett Weinstein saying, "Ooh, there's a lot of stuff from religion maybe we should have listened to in 1995." And also Ayan Hirsi Ali, the ex-Muslim. She's now a Christian, not because of anything to do with Jesus, but because we are in a clash of civilizations, and we need to form up and squad up with the Christians. So check that out, patreon.com/leftreckoning.
Okay.
Yeah, so she's also, I mean, people might remember her as the woman who said, who got Niall Ferguson to leave his wife, but also said that Anders Breivik needed to do the terror attack in Norway because no one was listening to him, that Europe was committing suicide. So she's a little bit out there, so I thought Ina was the perfect person to talk about her coming to Christ.
How hard did she come to Christ?
Well, the thing is she's been... Hitchens was a big fan of hers, so she has been in this atheist Sam Harris type of mold.
Right.
For a
No,
while.
I seem to remember her from the IDW as a way of proving that.
Look, we have a woman and a non-white person,
and she says Muslims bad.
Exactly the same thing we're all saying.
And and by we, you're talking about Sam Harrison. So she agrees with us.
Exactly.
This is sort of she was like the apostate. She was sort of like the Dave Rubin for the
Why
left.
I left the
right?
Islamic world. Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, but now and to be fair though, Ina pointed out that she's actually been on this Christianity kick, not for her, but she said look, we're not going to get Muslims to go straight to atheism, so we should try to convert them to Christianity.
Well, actually, I mean, the converts, I mean, having done a little bit of this work back in my undergrad in terms of converts, some of the most hardcore, whatever religion they are now, come from converts because they go hard into, I mean, it also shows that there's really not that much difference between, it's really more about fundamentalism versus non-fundamentalism than it is one religion versus another. The details start to get the Venn diagram starts to line up very neatly once you start getting to those fundamentalist edges of these religions, whether they are Judaism or Christianity or Islam. The restrictions on women, the restrictions on basically just imposing the patriarchy. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to. And just about everything emanates out of that. Yeah. And so you're going to have a lot more in common with, fundamentalists from different religions than you will someone who is a fundamentalist and not particularly religious.
Yeah, it turns out the content of your fundamentalism isn't really the what matters. It's the approach of being a fundamentalist.
Yep. All right, quick break, then fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it to my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman!
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Cedar, what a fucking nightmare!
Can we bring back DJ Danner?
Yeah, or a couple of them, just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. ever see white people doing drugs? They look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males.
Psych. Fuck them. Fuck them. Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100.
Can't knock the hustle.
Come on! Fuck them. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday! Happy birthday to me, Jew boy!
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on! Come on! Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. Sam Seder, Fun Half, Majority Report, Postal Strong. Would MR be interested in having a representative on the show to highlight the growing threat to postal letter carriers regarding a huge uptick in violent assaults and thefts against them? It's become such an issue due mainly to lack of protections that a bipartisan bill has even been drafted, but it needs the support of the public to help move it forward. Well, send us an email with more information at majorityreporters@gmail.com. The Flower Bro. Anyone in the Bay Area, join us today at 3:30 p.m. Pacific at SFUSD. 555 Franklin at San Francisco. The youth will not be silenced protesting the censorship of students who stand with Palestine. Eli from Jersey. Sorry for the long one. I know it's annoying. Could I get a shofar? Today marks the 1-year anniversary of the death of my best friend Charles Stern. After a years-long battle with leukemia, took him out of school multiple times. He was an amazing friend, brilliant political mind, and one of the most kind-hearted people I will ever meet. I feel like the world lost a brilliant leftist thinker before even most got to know him. Sure, Eli, I'm sorry for your loss. This is for Charles. Shorter IMs are better, folks. Iowa Ryan, have you checked out the Protect Illinois Communities Act assault weapon ban that will probably get picked up by the Supreme Court? JB, that's Pritzker, the governor there, has done some good things. Meaningless Paul, my kids brought home RSV as well, Sam. It's a killer. Jim from PA, Matt and Bradley forgot to turn off Make the Tim Pool's music sound bad filter on Sam's mic. Bang of the Buck, Sore Throat Cedar. Those new deep tones seeing me through this hump day left is best.
People seem to like it more than your normal voice.
Yeah. Well, I remember back in the day when I was doing radio, if I got like any type of throat thing and then for a week I would be like this, people would really respond well. In fact, I could realize it. I'm not quite there. In a day or two, when this moves a little bit further down, but it's up too close to my nose. It's weird. Sam sounds like Michael Saul Rosenberg impression of him. You see, that's what I'm saying with the nose there. Dingo. Honestly thought Sam finally had an AI doing the ad reads. So close. General Seder, did you see Captain Heidegger has entered the war on Christmas? I did not see that.
Wow. Good to have another ally. I mean,
yep.
We've had our differences.
It's true. Let's, we were talking about James Comer. James Comer, as they gear up for impeachment, someone asked me on the IMs if I thought that impeachment is going to help Biden like it helped Clinton. And I think there are other headwinds that Biden has that we may not see it help as much. But I still contend it's not going to hurt Biden. I think the idea is to try and diminish how much Trump's impeachment hurt him. I mean, the idea is to make it so that you have people go to the polls and say there's no difference between the two of them. They're both corrupt. They both got impeached. I mean, I think that's the theory. Certainly, Trump feels like the more politicized impeachment can become, the less any given impeachment means anything. And that's the theory. And I think the James Comer's latest tour really is indicative of this. Because if you were really impeaching about something, you would spend your tour just providing that evidence. Or in fact, if you knew that impeachment was imminent, you wouldn't necessarily have to go out on tour and justify the imminence of it. Your evidence would do it. And yet, he's on there complaining, in this instance, on Newsmax, that Fox News is not towing the line enough, and so he's not going to go back on it. I mean, this is sort of fascinating. I'm just trying to think of, like, I don't know, some politician coming on this show and saying, I'm not going on MSNBC anymore because I found that, Rachel Maddow was very skeptical about my claims. Or not even really like this is about Steve Ducey, for God's sakes. If Steve Ducey is pulling you apart, you know you got a problem. Here is James Comer.
Forget the Democrats like Dan Goldman who say there's no evidence. My concern is when the media, especially the conservative media, starts siding with the Bidens. Listen to Steve Ducey over at Fox saying you don't have evidence. Listen.
If they have the stuff. The Republicans at this point don't have, they've got a lot of ledgers and spreadsheets, but they have not connected the dots. They've connected the dots, the Department of Justice did on Hunter, but they have not shown where Joe Biden, did anything illegally.
Now, Chairman, school Ducey on how this works. The way to connect the dots is by gathering all the information and then you connect them. So go ahead.
I'll pause it for something. Just think about this is like real rear guard work, right?
You're losing if you have to do this.
I mean, this is, if you're having to go on, and I got news for you, like Comer's not surprised by this question. I can tell you that right now. This is not like, whoa, I had no idea we were going to be talking about Steve Ducey. This is, hey, will you please try and discipline Steve Ducey? That's what's going on here. This is a threat to Fox News. You're not going to get access to all the great stories I have, me, James Comer, if you don't tell a Ducey to back off. Really, this should be framed like, if you can't even convince Ducey, how can you pretend this is real? But all right, continue.
Chairman, school Ducey on how this works. The way to connect the dots is by gathering all the information and then you connect them. So go ahead.
Well, I think we've done a pretty good job connecting the dots. We've traced 2 checks from influence peddling schemes going directly into Joe Biden's pocket. We traced the fact that one of these checks that went into Joe Biden's back pocket was a $40,000 check that came from China that just happened to be part of a $400,000 check to the company that Joe Biden was supposed to be 10% owner of, the big guy.
Pause it. Wait a second. Keep that up there. I'm just trying to look at this. Sarah and James Biden Sr. What's underneath there? Agents of China? He loaned his brother $200,000, and his brother paid him back. He had exactly zero profit associated in that, but we've already heard James Comer go like, well, but the fact that he got it paid back.
The memo
Chinese.
The memo reading Manchurian candidate.
Well, the memo, it's still a loan repayment.
That is, yeah, that, you know what that means in Mandarin.
Lo and behold, that 40,000 ended up being 10%. But at the end of the day, with any investigation, it concludes with depositions. And we certainly are going to give the president's son an opportunity to tell us whether or not our dots are connected correctly. I believe they are. We've had some financial experts come in, and it's going to be hard to answer some of these questions about these massive wires coming from our enemies around the world and how they laundered them through the various shelters.
Listen, I agree with you. You've been on here a lot, and we do. We're waiting for, you need to hear these people try and connect it. They're trying to excuse themselves or prove their innocence. Why would Ducey say, if all the work you've done, that you have nothing? Why do you think that is?
Pause it for 1 second. What I actually thought, what's his face here? Boiling was going to say, he was fired from Fox News. What I thought he was going to say, why don't you have them do this in public? You're just telling me you got them, nailed dead to rights. Wouldn't that be great to do it in public on TV? Nope, he's asking again. We're going like 3 deep into why Steve Ducey is skeptical. This is fascinating.
I always love the connect the dots thing too. Like connect the dots, of course. Children's puzzles that make crude line drawings. Like I don't know if it's a really good metaphor for like doing official investigations.
When you're starting the impeachment, the dots should already be connected. Right? I mean, that's the whole point. Impeachment is you're supposed to have it's like it works like a grand jury. You're supposed to have all the evidence that's already there, and then you decide, is this enough to indict?
No.
But they've yet to actually. They keep vacillating between like, we've got the goods on them. We just need to go forward to see if we've got the goods on them. Out on the campaign trail. Go back a little bit.
Excuse themselves or prove their innocence. Why would Ducey say, if all the work you've done, that you have nothing? Why do you think that is?
Well, he's had that position from the very beginning. I've quit going on Fox and Friends because of Ducey. He's the one guy on Fox that's been very critical of the investigation. I have my theory why. We'll talk about that at a later point. But at the end of the day, he's entitled to his opinion. But I don't think the average viewer of Fox News agrees with Ducey one bit. I mean, the American people, even 40% of the Democrats, are concerned that Joe Biden has violated the law with his family's shady business schemes. And the American people expect somebody to investigate the President of the United States for public corruption. And thank God where the Oversight Committee is.
I'm so glad you said that, 400,000. Yeah, you want to talk about dots, Ducey? Here, Hunter gets 400,000. Hunter and the associates get 400,000. Joe Biden gets a check for 40,000. That's 10%, my man. We've heard of 10%, Mr. 10%, and they've been saying there's no dots to be connected. Chairman James Comer, if he doesn't show up, he'll be held in contempt. We'll get you back and talk about what the next steps are. Chairman.
Somebody's better be out there and getting to Ducey and finding out if he doesn't see that 40 is 10% of 400.
I wonder what dirt he has on Ducey.
Well, I think Bowling clearly had a problem with Ducey at Fox, and and this is payback time. Meanwhile, Comer, who has what's amazing about Comer is he has like his own backdrop that he has in his office. We used to do this for the Majority Report. We used to have like a paper backdrop. You drop it down. but it's not. It's all just Comer. It's not like the oversight committee. It's not impeachment. It's just Comer. It's like it's such a personal brand.
And so this was from Monday, this one with Newsmax's Rob Finnerty, reacting to the Jake Tapper interview that we discussed yesterday.
Yeah.
Wake Up America, I'm Rob Finnerty. So Hunter Biden indicted on 9 new tax charges in California on Friday, including 3 felonies. But the big question today is, does Hunter show up to testify on Wednesday after being subpoenaed by the House Oversight Committee? Joining us now for more is the man who issued that subpoena. Oversight Committee Chairman, Kentucky Congressman James Comer is with us. Congressman, great to have you on. Appreciate you being with us on a Monday. It's going to be a big week. You were on CNN Friday night with Jake Tapper. I happened to catch this live. And I get it. You've got to go on places like CNN, MSNBC. Otherwise, the other half of America doesn't hear about any of this. But I want you to take a look at how they're trying to portray you and then spin your investigation. Take a look.
We think that this is just the tip of the iceberg. We think there are many more crimes. And my concern is that Weiss may have indicted Hunter Biden to protect him from having to be deposed.
Yes.
in the House Oversight Committee on Wednesday.
He indicted him to protect him. Yes. The classic rubric. He indicted him to protect him. I got it.
So, Congressman, you weren't able to see Tapper during that interview, right? You're just hearing him in your ear?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You see what happened there? He's making your investigation sound like a joke, and he's trying to make you look like a joke. And then half of America sees that, and they think your investigation is a joke. Yeah. How do you work around that? How do you work through that?
Well, that's the first time I went on CNN in 3 months. We thought we would give it a try. You know, Jake Tapper is an intelligent guy, but he's playing to a low IQ audience. You know, CNN just is hemorrhaging viewers every day. And Jake's doing what he's told by his bosses at CNN, who are doing what they're told by their bosses at the Democrat National Committee. I mean, CNN is a wholly owned, unprofitable subsidiary of the Democrat National Committee.
I mean, this is fascinating that that the strategy is, well, I guess what it basically does, it just tells you exactly what the strategy is. This is not for the public at large. When you go on and say, I'm here to convince the I'm doing this for the American public, but half of them are just low IQ and they'll never get it. They're stupid and they'll never get it. I'm doing this for the American public. It is clear that the strategy behind impeachment. Remember, this is ostensibly not a political campaign. You know, this is impeachment, and regardless of whether you thought that the Democrats should have impeached Donald Trump, I happen to think that they should have, and for actually more than they did. But you would be hard pressed to find a single Democrat who was not at least saying, like, we know how important this step is. We know how big of a deal it is. And it's important that we, provide this evidence to gain credibility with a huge part of the public that's not going to do it. And he's there just basically saying, everybody who, all the news media is in the bag, including some at Fox News. It's fascinating. And I think, again, because they only are gearing this to their narrow constituency, and not that narrow. I mean, it's 40% probably of the population. It is, I think, going to help Biden politically. I don't know how much opportunity it is to help him, based upon all the other stuff that's going on with Biden. But this is certainly, I think, ultimately not going to hurt him.
But I also think it's interesting, the sort of like pantomiming of both the actual text of what they're talking about and then the subtext, because of Finnerty trying to confer legitimacy on Comer's inquiry while also being like, while they're on air being like, you got to switch up the strategy because you're looking dumb. Like he's not even disputing necessarily that Tapper was unsuccessful in making him look stupid. He was like, you kind of embarrassed yourself.
Oh yeah, he basically
on CNN.
said half of the public thinks that your thing is a joke.
Like there has to be. It's almost like you need
and
to
Comer says, "You're right. It was a mistake for me to go on there
I shouldn't have done that.
because the people on that audience are all dim-witted anyways."
Gonna talk to News Nation about this.
I mean, it is a sort of it's just becoming it's totemic, and it is why this is going to be such a problem, not just for there is, I think, a potential upside for Biden here, but I really think it is a detriment to Republicans in New York and California, those 18 Republicans who are elected in Biden districts. I think that's where it's really going to hurt the Republicans more than anywhere else. I mean, you already have a couple of Republican senators who are scoffing at this. I mean, just outwardly scoffing at it. Like the Murkowskis, the people. Now, Murkowski and Biden have a special relationship. Biden allowed for that the drilling that happened up there that Murkowski wanted, but she, I think, is indicative of a couple of the sort of like more bluey. Like I wouldn't want to be running in Pennsylvania and having to defend this. I wouldn't want to be running in Wisconsin or Michigan and having to defend this, or Arizona or having to defend this.
And it's a bad situation for for vulnerable House Republicans too, because Jim McGovern pointed this out in the Rules Committee hearing yesterday that Don Bacon said to the press, Don Bacon, Republican from Nebraska, who's in a Biden district, that like he doesn't believe yet that Biden has committed high crimes and misdemeanors, but is going to vote to open the inquiry. Like that's a contortion act that you're going to kind of have to play.
Well, ultimately, he's going to have to point to something new that is going to be revealed in this process.
Right.
And there isn't going to be anything new revealed.
And inevitably, as much as they say we're not going to vote for impeachment,
oh, they have to.
They have to.
That's my point. Right. If Don Bacon now says, "I'm not going to," I'm not clear on what Biden now, he's going to play this game where it's like, I didn't understand that 40,000 was 10% of 400,000. That's pretty clearly there's a relationship between that money.
Right.
One is 10% of another. And that's just too convenient because you know that when Joe Biden is taking money from his son, they're only going to use round figures. I'm only doing 10%. Everything you're getting, Hunter, is a way to bribe me. Well, I'm only taking 10%. Not 11, not 9. Because that's not industry standard when you're trying to buy off a former vice president. It's as if it's like, this is the industry standard. 10%. That's what, you think that's just a coincidence? No way. Unbelievable. Speaking of Pennsylvania, this is... for the past, this has been going on for decades, but really it picked up a lot of steam over the past couple of decades. The idea of privatizing more and more of municipal functions. The push for privatization is what led to the Flint, Michigan lead poisoning. The governor of Michigan wanted to separate the water systems. They had to do it on an interim basis through getting different water that needed a different type of treatment. That type of treatment ended up corroding the pipes in a way that they couldn't anticipate, et cetera, et cetera. Chicago, maybe 15, 20 years ago, sold off its parking meters and lost control of that revenue. And also the ability to sort of say like, hey, you know what? We might want a pedestrian area here. There are plenty of examples of this. And to the extent that we should have any policy work regarding these public services, we should be essentially making more of these enterprises public. not less. And there is a there is a push in Pennsylvania to incentivizing the private companies to buy publicly owned water systems. And here is some testimony. This is from Tony Belitto. He's the executive director of the North Penn Water Authority, who speaks out against the privatization of water. And some of these stories are just nuts.
The reason that the private companies charge so much higher than municipal systems is threefold. There are three explicit reasons as to why their prices are so much higher. First, it's because their costs are spread over a very wide customer base. So customers living in one geographic region have to contribute to paying for infrastructure improvements in other distant areas in which they receive no benefit. They call that economies of scale, but that's just a nice term for meaning that we have to pay for a system that we don't get any benefit from. Second, it's because the for-profit business model requires that the company pay a dividend to their shareholders. Municipal authorities have no such obligation. And third, they pay exorbitantly high salaries, bonuses, and stock options to their upper management when compared to the more modest financial compensation received by employees of publicly owned systems, in the order of millions of dollars. Someone has to pay for that. Act 12 has been called a fair market value. There's nothing fair about it. It's actually predatory pricing. It's an odd situation where both the buyer and the seller have an incentive for the price to be as high as possible because they're going to get that back in full with interest as well. We talk about what is the appraised value of a system that is on the market to be purchased, and they hire consultants to decide what's the value. When we talk about depreciation, they're not buying the pumps and the pipes and the treatment plants. They're not interested in that. What they're buying is the customers, which is a long-term, forever revenue stream. So to argue about whether a pump is worth what or whatever it's been depreciated, it's the continuous stream of customers that they're actually purchasing. That has the value. One way to put it is they're purchasing not the eggs, but the goose that lays the golden egg. They're purchasing that customer base. That's what they're buying. So in conclusion, we regard the fact that Act 12 should be modified by adding a voter referendum so that the rate-paying customers have the opportunity to voice whether or not they're in favor of privatization. And number two, the scope should be addressed to deal with only distressed systems, which are financially troubled and which are operationally deficient. And those are criteria that can actually be quantified. And lastly, I would state that people should see privatization for what it really is, which is a scam. It is a loan disguised as a gift, wrapped up with empty promises that must be paid back with interest through exorbitant rate increases, resulting in no better service to the customers, while the private company's upper management and investors fill their own pockets with obscene amounts of profits, and they laugh all the way to the bank.
And the reason why a municipality or a state would allow for privatization of these things is twofold. One is it gives a one-time boost in revenue that some of these politicians may not be here in 5 or 6 years when you got to pay the piper. And if they are, it's the fault of the private entity, not them, that the rates are going up. And the other is, of course, that there's a tremendous amount of money lobbying these state senators because, like the guy has explained, you're getting a sort of like a monopolistic control of a revenue stream for years and years to go. I mean, you can even sell off, you can securitize that because it's so like everybody's going to need water. And we can look at the actuarial tables and tell you how many people it is. And we don't have any control on it. No one's putting any brakes on our rate increases. Where are you going to go? You're not going to dig your own well in a city. And even in a small town, if you're living in a small, you're not, this is it. You're going to get this water or you're not. This is Pennsylvania State Rep Joe Cherisi. Speaking against, this is at the Pennsylvania State Assembly Consumer Protection Committee hearing. Talking about the implications of privatizing these water systems.
Your product is free, unlike a lot of other companies. But the challenge that we have today is when I have a senior citizen call me and tell me she's peeing in the backyard because her water bill and her sewer bill doubled, and no one cared about that. Your return on investment in 3 years. Show me somewhere else you go for return on investment in 3 years. Somebody buys a business and says, we got to get all our money back in 3 years, and does it on the back of the consumer. That's where the issue lies right now, is that my water bill, my sewer bill doubled. Nothing got better at my house. Nothing changed what I had. So we're here to look out for the consumers that we represent. And I think that it is on also the PUC to understand that it's very easy to say, well, that's what the municipality said and we need to agree to this. But then to think about the consumers, those senior citizens who pay more for water and sewer right now than they do taxes in their community, just for the service of being able to go to the bathroom. There's a Broadway show called Urinetown that I'm going to ask you all to refer to that charge you to use the bathroom and to use the water. And that's exactly where we've gone, where people have had to make a decision whether I'm going to flush my toilet or I'm going to go out and buy food. And I think that it's the obligation of everyone here, and the two people from the municipalities, I'm with you 100%. I wish my area would have done this, but I'm not here to take on the companies and the quality of what you put out, because I think you do put out a great product at the end of the day, which is given by God, and you get it to the home and make sure it's pure. What I'm here to say is, when does profit, is it enough? When is it enough that we're going to tax people or charge them too much for an essential thing that every one of us has to have? And I would ask you all this, including the PUC, to take this under consideration when you buy these authorities, that maybe it's a 7 to 8 year profitability, not a 3. Maybe it's a lower rate that our CEOs, and it's not the CEOs, but our stock up, people own the stock, and our employees are not making numbers in the millions to get an essential product that keeps us alive to each homeowner. Maybe it's an obligation that we need to think about. I can't sit here and say that I'm happy what happened in Limerick. It wasn't your decision. It was the council's decision to sell the authority, which I still will ride them about. I think it was a little bit of a greed that happened in our community. But I also think there's a moral issue that's happening. And when I have a senior citizen tell me that they're going, literally she said that, a woman called me and said, I'm peeing in my backyard rather than to flush my toilet because I can't afford the sewer bill any longer and I can't afford to eat. So I'm sorry to be so blunt, but I think it needs to be said as we move forward and look at these laws, how we deal with this in the future. Thank you.
The guy's so close, but the problem is his constituents are not consumers. They're citizens. And he's spot on. Everybody needs this service. And the idea that you're going to tell these private companies, don't be so greedy that you need all of your investment back in 3 years. Make it 7 or 8. Control the compensation. You're a lawmaker. You don't need to be in a position to ask politely for a corporation not to gouge your constituents. You're so close to understanding that my constituents should not be consumers for basic necessities. They're citizens. This should not be a commodity.
Just imagine that. Like, I'm a consumer of sewer services. It's just ludicrous. Like you're comparing like phones or something like that.
Right. And first off, there's no marketplace here. And the infrastructure is, all of the investment has already been made, and it was made by the taxpayers.
Right.
By our society. And the idea that they are resorting to this, and understand, this is just a wealth transfer from women like that older woman who has to pee in her backyard to wealthy people who are not wanting to pay more in taxes. That's what's happening there. The municipalities sell these water systems so that they don't have to raise taxes on people. And the people that they would raise taxes on are obviously the wealthier people, because they are getting more out of, and they are profiting more off of the infrastructure that exists in that town, off of the policing, off of the fire department, whatever. They're literally profiting more. That's why they have more money. And And if you want to tell me that's because that they deserve it, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. You're deluded. They get to keep some of it, but the bottom line is there should not be this type of disparity because of luck. I don't know what decision that old woman made that is forcing her, that you think that she made to force her to pee outside because she can't afford water in her town. But I think most people would not want a society that that someone gets punished for some decision that they supposedly made that ends up leading them to being that strapped.
Yeah.
And so the bottom line is, when a municipality sells off its water supply, it is doing so to protect them from the political implications of taxing the wealthy in that community. And then that cost is borne by low-income people who have to pay a higher percentage of what they have to basic necessities. And this lawmaker close to understanding what the problem is, but not quite there to understand exactly what you got to do about it.
Yeah, you know what the problem is?
You're playing the game called capitalism.
Yep. And you know, to be clear, a state government, a municipal government, they don't have the ability to print money like the U.S. government does.
Right.
So they are constrained by their budgets in a way that the U.S. government is not. And there's two ways to address that. You raise taxes, and you also elect people who are going to go to the federal government where they can expend this and have them subsidize water, you know, basic necessities. Really should be water, electricity, power, food, housing. We should not have to have these things as commodities that people can jack up the prices on so that they can, you know, basically have this wealth transfer from the public into private hands.
Yeah, I believe episode 8 of TMBS, we had Matt Chrisman on to talk about sewer socialism in the upper Midwest. And yeah, like, the stuff is eternal. You're always going to need pipes and plumbing and stuff.
Somebody
like that.
wrote a piece on that we had on the Majority Report too.
Yeah, that's right. I can't remember who that was. But yeah, I mean, this is, very tried and, common battleground for this sort of thing. And it can't be left to capitalists in the area because they'll just, have you over a barrel, almost literally.
Alpha Incipient says the YouTube channel Climate Town recently did a fantastic deep dive on Chicago parking privatization. Just a horrible decision all around.
And the other one I think about, Sam, is the one you always talk about with Brownback.
That was just him cutting taxes,
right?
And that was that was just
the trickle down doesn't work.
That wasn't as much about privatization as it was about a tax scheme and this theory that Art Laffer had promulgated and has driven the Republican Party ever since, that the more you cut taxes, the higher revenues go, because there's going to be more people are going to be incentivized to make more money because now they don't have to give any to the government. And of course, no pun intended, but it's laughable. And Kansas showed that. I will say we've been talking about what is and what is not a commodity, but I will say that this is a commodity, ladies and gentlemen. This is a big opportunity. We're very proud to give you this opportunity. Digital trading cards. The idea, this is basically NFTs, right? Which have all but lost all their value.
Yeah, not great for the NFTs.
Donald Trump is basically hawking NFTs, but they also realize, we're only going to get so much with the NFTs because they're not that valuable. So we need to have a solid sort of collector's item here. Here is Donald Trump literally selling playing cards that are based upon his being indicted in Georgia.
Everyone, this is your favorite president, Donald J. Trump, with some very exciting news. My last 2 Trump digital trading card collections sold out in just hours. And now I'm back with my latest series
Pause
called
it for a
the
second.
Mug.
I just want you to just marinate on that. My last 2 digital trading cards sold out.
Wait, are these digital or are these real? Okay, sorry.
No. They're digital. They're digital. Now you get a bonus if you buy enough. But the idea of digital cards selling out, I'll tell you something, folks.
Yeah.
You better get this video that we are doing right now. You better get today's episode of the Majority Report and better buy it because we're going to run out.
A trading card, just
No, we're going to run out of this. We're going to run out of the video.
just can't hit Control C, Control V.
Exactly. We're not doing that anymore. We're only doing it like 60,000 times. But as soon as it's going to run out, we're not going to hit it 61,000.
There's only so many times you can copy these ones and zeros and have a schmuck pay high dollar amount for it.
Go back a little bit.
Everyone, this is your favorite president, Donald J. Trump, with some very exciting news. My last 2 Trump digital trading card collections sold out in just hours. And now I'm back with my latest series called the Mugshot Edition. I wonder where
Sorry,
that
pause
came
it real
from.
quick.
The Mugshot Edition.
Mugshot Edition.
I'm just going to read the... No, don't move it. I want to read... You're good. I just want to read the fine print for folks. Trump digital trading cards are intended as collectible items for... and NFTs in parentheses, are intended as collectible items for individual enjoyment only, not for investment vehicles, which I think is kind of an important actual thing. You can maybe make that a little bit larger, but anyway, go ahead, Bradley.
The Mugshot Edition. I wonder where that came from. The Mugshot Edition. 47 all-new stunning cards, and here is the best part. I'm doing 2 important things for my Trump collectors. For the first time, we're creating a real physical Trump card. Purchase 47 digital cards, and we'll mail you a beautiful trading card. It is an authentic piece of the suit I wore when I took that now famous mugshot, and it was a great suit, believe me, a really good suit. It's all cut up, and you're going to get a piece of it. I'll be autographing some of them. A true collector's item. This is something to give to your family, to your kids.
Pause it for 1 second. Wait. He's only autographing some of them?
No, not all of them.
Not all.
Yeah, I mean, he's a busy guy.
I like also that he took the mugshot. It's the mugshot I took.
I took that one.
I took it. They let me do a selfie.
And that was actually a
They
great
let me do a
suit.
selfie, which I thought was big of him.
I like how it's a great... I mean, to be honest, I used to be a basketball card collector, and jersey cards were a big draw.
Oh yeah.
What do they do? They take a piece of the jersey? and they
Well, that's the thing is I think this is honestly more authentic than the NBA ones because the game worn, those ones, it's like a guy wore it once, like, you know, in his house and then took it off. It's very not real. But
do you really think that he cut up that suit? Do you really think he cut up?
I want to believe. It's one of my favorite suits. It's definitely one.
I wonder how we could
sentimental value.
often
exactly
like you can, yeah.
Audit the cards.
I'll be autographing some of them. A true collector's item. This is something to give to your family, to your kids and your grandchildren. With the purchase of 47
Pause
of
it.
the Trump...
Pause it. Don't take it down. Who is that guy? Who is that guy? Well, I mean, I know who those 2 people are, just random people, but who's the guy that there's in the picture? That doesn't look like Donald Trump.
Yeah, no, that's what's funny is they didn't even pay an artist to make any of these. This is
It's AI.
created. Yeah.
I mean, incidentally, do you know how much 47 of these cost?
I was curious about that.
It's like $4,700.
And then you get
but then you get the real card.
Yeah, you get another card.
But I mean, think about what the markup on this is. They paid the guy to shoot that video and edit it, but that was probably, I don't know, like a couple of grand.
Yeah.
Because they just jump cut it. It's only one take.
Right.
It's only going to take you 15 minutes. And then they just run it through AI. Can we get Donald Trump pointing? Can we get Donald Trump on a horse? Can we get Donald Trump on this? And they generate those, and they sell them for $4,700. And then, of course, they got to spring for the postage to sell the real card, with the fake suit.
Yeah, and we're going to want to profit on that too.
Yeah.
Digital trading cards. You will also be invited to join me for a gala dinner at my beautiful Mar-a-Lago, my home in Florida. You've perhaps heard of it. It's become a pretty famous place. We just had our first dinner for my collectors, and we had a lot of fun together. That was a great evening. That was a fantastic evening. Some people call these cards pop art or modern art. I wish I looked as good as I do on those cards. That I can tell you.
Yeah.
They give me muscles where, believe me, I don't have them. I wanted to keep my Trump digital trading cards.
Pause it for
at
a
the
second.
same
I just also want to be clear. You get invited to Mar-a-Lago, but you've got to pay
your own way.
Yeah, exactly. It's just you get an invitation, but it's another.
A lot of people would pay just for the invitation.
It's amazing. Go ahead.
Cards that I can tell you, they give me muscles where, believe me, I don't have them. I wanted to keep my Trump digital trading cards at the same price, $99 each. So go to collecttrumpcards.com. It's really easy to buy. They sold out incredibly fast the last time, and I think the mugshot edition will sell out even faster. So don't miss out. Go to collecttrumpcards.com. Go right now and collect your own exclusive piece of American history, and we'll all have fun together. Have a good life.
Yeah, have a good life. We'll all have fun together. Have a good life. That's a very great combination.
I mean,
not together, but you know.
What's like? How? Let me ask you this: how are we not selling these?
Shame.
Well, okay. No, I would feel bad. I don't know if I would feel bad because I know who would buy them. Look, I mean, he's selling these cards for $99. We can go out and we can produce these cards for almost no money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you bought 47 for $99 each, it comes out to $4,653.
Yeah, so I said $4,700.
And I feel bad for plugging the Left Reckoning store, and I'm actually wearing our merchandise and didn't even meant it. And this thing is a nice sweater, literally half the price of one of those one digital card.
Yeah, but it doesn't have an image of.
It doesn't have
Trump
any AI
with,
on it.
muscles anywhere.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, looking like I don't know, Ivan Drago or something.
We put Matt or David on the Lincoln Memorial, just super jacked.
Like, but I mean, how much money could he be making off of this? Let's say, I mean, they like, are they selling 100?
Yeah, did they say that how limited the run is?
Like, I mean, is he? He's making like maybe a couple $100,000 off this. Like, just like, it's amazing. The guy won't leave $1 on the on like
Yeah, that's what I'm
he'll
saying.
cross the street to pick up a quarter type of situation.
Yeah, I'm looking for how limited a run these are, but it doesn't.
Do you really? I'll tell you how limited run they are.
As long as people want to pay for it.
Exactly. How much does it cost us to produce more than one? Oh, $0?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then we're going to run out when people stop buying. That's when we run out. Do you think there's ever been a moment where they're like, sorry, you want $99 for a digital file where we don't have any more?
The mugshot suit was authenticated by Mears, one of the largest authenticators in sports memorabilia. They called the mugshot suit, and reminder, this is what a authenticator of memorabilia said, the most historically significant artifact in United States history. So that's what Trump's suit is.
We're going to cut up the Constitution.
You can get a piece. That's for term 2.
Term 2. Wait, the Constitution, and then if we run out of that, we're going to do the Declaration of Independence, and then we're going to literally piece by piece sell off the White House and the Capitol. Amazing.
Is that Betsy Ross flag? Limited run. We cut up about 1,000 of these little pieces. You can get them.
We're going to slowly begin to dig up some of the greatest American heroes. Sell their mummified
George Washington's wooden
body.
teeth shaved and put onto a trading card.
Oh my God. Should we do? What should we do here?
You want to do the Rogan thing?
Yeah, let's do Joe Rogan. Okay. I don't know if we can do all 7 minutes. This is Joe Rogan with Evan Hafer. He is the founder of Black Rifle Coffee. This is one of the oldest stories in the book, which is the reason why people have reactionary positions is because the liberals did not have reactionary positions. And you can hear this not just on the Joe Rogan show. I've talked many times about the time, like years ago, I was on with Whitman, Christy Todd Whitman, on Chris Hayes' weekend show, when she was talking about the reason why Republicans don't believe in climate change is because liberals were so obnoxious about it.
So snobbish about it.
They were just so like, oh, climate change exists, and it just like forced us to not believe in climate change. Here's Joe Rogan with his version of this story.
Yeah.
Like maybe that thing is like maybe there's a little bit of a culty.
Just a little. They're discussing how bad it is right before this. How bad it is that you can't say what you want in comedy, and now they discussed talking about how you basically need to kill communism. So,
yeah, you can't say what you want in comedy. I mean, he's got the biggest podcast that exists, and the idea that he can't say whatever he wants, even Spotify, the company that, incidentally, they just laid off 1,500 people, Spotify. And I think Rogan's contract is probably coming up very soon. It's going to be interesting to see what they do about this. It's a real corporation, and they publish. They don't just publish, they produce Joe Rogan's show. By produce, I mean they pay for it, and it's exclusive.
Like maybe that thing is like maybe there's a little bit of a culty aspect to that thing. And here's a question: do you think we're doing the same thing overseas? Are we doing the same sort of social media campaigns?
Ooh,
we must be. I asked Mike Baker, and he fucking gave me the runaround.
I think here's my honest. Everybody that starts a conversation by saying here's my honest opinion. But my assessment in this is I think that we have forfeited portions of foreign service to the left in the context of wokeism, politically correct, like the act of maintaining your sovereignty in the context of military and then economically is not politically correct. You can't broker in that rhetoric and then implement a strategic long-term goals and objectives that are going to meet and exceed what we have to do to maintain America and ultimately America's power overseas if you believe in it. You just can't, because it's not politically correct. If you believe that all nations are created, equal and all political ideologies are equal, that's just wrong. It's not. I think communism is a dog shit ideology. I think that it should have been flushed down the international toilet a long time ago.
We just haven't done it good yet.
Yeah.
We're going to figure it out this time, Evan.
Yeah, and
You're so close-minded.
You can't dabble in it. It's so dangerous to start dabbling in these things because it's a failed ideology. You have to flush it down the toilet. It has to go away forever. And then you have to evolve past that at a certain point. But when you've co-opted our academic institutions and you've indoctrinated generations.
All right, pause it for 1 second. I mean, what's fascinating is about, he's talking about dabbling. These guys really dabble. Because they don't really know what they're talking about.
Well, that's the thing is, I don't know. This guy's like an army ranger or some shit before he started slinging coffee. He might know about Operation Condor and how many people were killed. But just for people who don't know, I think a little bit of context of when he says we lost a certain level of, or we're too politically correct or woke now to do what needs to be done to maintain our position as a world power. Let's just remind people, this is Abby Martin and Vincent Bevins, just a couple minutes from Vincent Bevins talking about the Jakarta method with regards to what actually happened in this period that he's talking about with America canceling or throwing communism in the toilet.
This anti-communist extermination program spanned 45 years to at least 22 countries. Talk about how U.S. policy can really be seen extending through all of these countries, from Brazil to Vietnam, and why this should all be seen kind of in the same lens.
Right, yeah, so my book is really about the intentional mass murder of leftists, or people that are accused of being leftists. And as I said, I found that this happened in at least 22 cases in the Cold War, from beginning, I believe, 1954 in Guatemala is the first case that we have good evidence of, until the end of the 20th century. And I think that these must be seen as interconnected, because if you look at the particular tactics that are used, the ways that this happens across the Cold War, you see an accumulation of techniques and tricks and even rhetorical devices across the entire Cold War. So one thing will work here, and then they'll apply that tactic there. One thing will not work here, they'll apply that there. Across those 22 countries, there is a variation in the level of the involvement of the United States. You have active assistance in the case of Indonesia, where there was material assistance offered, and then eventually the United States government passed lists of people to the Indonesian military for them to be killed. In other countries, the assistance was more indirect. It was made clear behind the scenes to a particular government that we will sort of look the other way if you do what you need to do to deal with the local threat.
All right, so the point being here that when they're talking about wokeism, they're saying don't assassinate people. Don't create a model which you apply where your role in the context of that model varies from case study to case, to case.
Yeah.
What you do, but the model is the same. Annihilate, like literally kill all these people.
I mean, yeah.
And like what does communism do that is worse than killing all these people? Like, what is like everybody's got to wear the same uniform.
My question, or my proposed title for this is Joe Rogan smart enough to know he's endorsing death squads again? Because that's the thing. When let's say let them go a little bit more, I think it becomes even clearer.
And then you have to evolve past that at a certain point. But when you've co-opted our academic institutions and you've indoctrinated generations of the academic elite, and then they've worked their way into foreign service, and they've worked their way into the intelligence apparatus. Now they're going out and they're not willing to implement at the same degree that they might have been able to in the 1960s and 70s in the context of zero-sum game. We are here to win. That's what we do. And you got to play by the rules of nature, which is things will die. And when I say that, ideologies have to die, like they do. When they're failed.
All right, just to be also clear, he's not even it's not even limiting it to the Jakarta method. he's basically saying that coups, Allende and Mossadegh and bombing of Cambodia. I mean, all of these things had to be done, and things die. Things die.
It just happens. Ideologies, or maybe the people that hold those ideologies.
Exactly. You need to go out and get it done. And of course, this guy seemingly has no concept of like what the impetus for these reasons were doing. It wasn't necessarily like an ideology as much as it was specific people's interest in terms of money more often than not. And the blowback that came from these things.
Ideologies have to die, like they do. When they're failed and they're bad for freedom, which I tend to believe in radical freedom, when they're bad for individual liberty, when they're bad for freedom,
not for workers,
they gotta fucking die.
And if you're going to have
death also bad,
you're going to need
for individual freedom lovers.
Yeah, sorry, go back on here because Joe Rogan again. Like we paper over what was needed to basically enforce the world that this guy wants to live in, and then Joe Rogan says like, actually, it's them that want to do the tyranny.
Individual liberty, when they're bad for freedom, they gotta fucking die.
And if you're going to have communism, you're going to need someone to enforce that.
It only is implemented through tyranny. That's it.
Isn't that wild?
Yes.
That no one wants to do that math. They don't want to get to the 10th problem.
Right.
They want to stop at problem number 7 and go, well, it's really important that we share wealth, and the economic disparity is wrong, and we should all have money from the state and equal money, and we should all share, and billionaires shouldn't exist. And okay, how do you make that happen?
Right.
How do you take the money from the billionaires? Who do you give it to? Who gets to decide who gets what? Do we vote on where the money goes? What about those people that are
We should just say that he is now complaining about things like taxation and wealth distribution, and people who would maybe go on shows and say there shouldn't be billionaires existing. I don't know who that might be.
Who might that have been?
Where he heard that idea. But he is saying this in follow-up to a guy basically saying, like, we need to assassinate, we need to kill, we need to bomb, we need to blow up, we need to starve, we need to embargo, we need to do all these things to maintain freedom. And then he's saying, like,
you want to tax us, bro.
Everybody thinks about, like, oh, we need to have some type of taxation scheme, but who's going to enforce that? I mean, again, I remind you that we did that in this country right after dropping the atomic bomb on people, essentially. We had the highest marginal tax rate was 90%, 90 cents.
Someone's got to enforce
of
that.
Every dollar that you made over what in today's dollars would be $3 million was subject to taxation. If you want to come back to me on effective tax, because people get around, 50%. We never get close to 50% effective tax rates on a federal level in this country. So let's bring that in first, if that's where your problem is. But the tax rate was 90 cents on every dollar. And the jackbooted thugs who...
you got to enforce that.
Who enforced that were all red-blooded capitalist Americans.
Right. How do you take the money from the billionaires? Who do you give it to? Who gets to decide who gets what? Do we vote on where the money goes? What about those people that are under 85 IQ? Are they voting on this too?
Right.
They're going to vote for free Twinkies for everybody. free Twinkies and Mountain Dew. Yeah. I mean, if you just had, should all the billionaires spend their money on free Twinkies and Mountain Dew, and you just left it to people who aren't billionaires to vote for them, yeah, fuck those people. They're just going to vote it in. Should we take 90% of the money from people like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett? Fuck yeah, I don't need that money. Click. There's a lot of people that'll tell you that. Yeah. They don't want, like, if you're starting off, you're playing a game, like the game's capitalism. If you're starting off and you're 20 years old, 21 years old, and you don't make any money, and you're out there trying to find your purpose in life, and then you see someone who's been playing this game for 50 years, and he's flying around in a fucking private jet and getting driven around in a Rolls Royce, you're like, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
Fuck him. Fuck him. He's too far ahead of the game. But you're playing that game too. If you're working and you're getting paid for your work, you're playing a game. You might be playing a very low level of the game, but you're playing the game called capitalism. And the more work
Pause it.
you
Also,
do,
we should also say there's another name for that game. It's also called survival. I mean, because you got to pay for your rent and your food and this and that. We don't have an option to play that game. Who voted for that? Some 85 IQ Twinkie loving guy voted for the capitalism. I mean, everything he's saying is just absolute garbage. It's the most thoughtless stuff one could imagine. And he's saying this in response. He doesn't even realize the guy across the table for him has just been advocating literally mass murder, if it's necessary, to maintain some notion of an amorphous, undefined radical freedom that exists outside of like human beings being alive, right? Like you can have radical freedom and also kill a ton of people.
Yeah.
It doesn't somehow inhibit radical freedom.
The elitism here too, where he's saying we're going to have people vote on this stuff. Like the thing that people want, like generally the American public want, is like healthcare and like affordable rent and stuff like that. They're not saying, "Hey, let's tax Bill Gates so I can have Twinkies and Mountain Dew."
Right.
And that's really revealing that that's where Joe's head goes. Just a little bit more.
Yeah, the more effort you put in to figure out how to get more money, the more money you'll get if you're successful. And if you're not successful, you'll at least get lessons on how to do it wrong. And hopefully you're going to figure that out, because many people have, including that guy in the fucking Bentley, including that guy in the private jet. He's just 70 years old. And he's been playing this fucking game for 45 goddamn years hard. You know, he knows what he's doing. And
if I say fuck a lot,
like
maybe people won't notice
just,
that I'm actually just an elitist who's like trying to justify the millions of dollars I have. It's
like that guy.
The idea.
That guy.
If I say, well, talk like this.
The guy in the Bentley, he's not really. He's not like red faced and bald. Is he, Joe?
That he shouldn't have that money. Okay, what are you gonna do? You gonna take it from him? Who's gonna take it from him? The government?
IRS.
Yeah,
armed people?
IRS. Yeah.
What are you doing? Because that's the only way he's going to give it up.
It's the only way.
That's the only way you get to enforce people redistributing wealth.
Pause it. Now, what's amazing about this is we redistribute wealth every single day through taxation.
Exactly. That's not like a communism thing.
He's saying like the only way you're going to get them to give up money, and it is the case that in every single country in the world, except for what maybe like, what is it, Somalia? I don't know, and maybe any other, a couple of failed other nations. Taxation is enforced by the government having a monopoly of power. This is like basic stuff. It's the way that it works. Even in Texas, that's how it is. Yes, the government will arrest you if you do not pay your taxes. It's a slightly oversimplification and probably doesn't happen as much as I would like. But that is the fact. But again, he's talking about like how outrageous this concept where you would have armed people come to take a billionaire's money because they're going to tax it. And he is saying this in reaction to a guy who has just said, for our interests, and as if it's divorced from taking money, right? Like it's just for the sake of freedom, we need to go.
Freedom for their resources.
And kill the people that we killed in the 60s and the 70s. We need to get involved in the Vietnams. We need to get involved in the Korea's wars. We need to get involved in the coups in Argentina. We need to get involved in the killings in Indonesia. Like we need to do this to protect freedom.
Across everybody, including people that have done nothing. Like, and now you're going to get a lot of angry people, and you're going to get a lot of resentment. You know what pops out of something like that? Those ideas, far right ideologies, super far right. That's the rebound to this radical leftism. You know, Steve Bannon was talking about that. He was talking about Trump, like the people that are afraid of Trump. They're like, he's a moderate. He's a moderate in this movement. And believe me, if you guys fuck with him more, someone else is going to come along that's going to resonate with these people that realize they're getting fucked. And it's going to be just like what's happening in Argentina, where this guy gets elected and he's like, fuck everything. Everything's got to go. Everything's got to go.
Yeah,
and
I mean, we can stop
because
it there.
people are very excited about that. There's a...
Yeah, I think
so. So they're saying the people that are going to get fucked are the people who are going to get taxed. The wealthy people? Is this a revolt by the wealthy people?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is like what's going on in Malay. I don't think is. I think probably more of a result of the long-term effects of the type of assassination programs that we talked about from like the 70s and 80s, and also like Peronism was basically a sort of a more centrist with like some labor, but also right-wing stuff. It wasn't a far left government, and now Malay's coming in, and he's just doing what the IMF wants.
Yeah. All right. That's all I've got in me, folks. I went further than I thought I could today. I was buoyed by the insanity of watching that last Rogan clip.
6-minute Rogan clip.
Yeah.
I knew you didn't think we were going to get to the whole clip, but I thought I knew we were going to have to get to most of it.
There was a fish hook there.
All right, I'm going to read 3 IMs and then I got to get going because I've been drinking a lot of liquid IV. Really cool. Have you seen the story about the Israeli Telegram channel 72 Virgins discussing sadistic IDF horror?
Horrible.
Billy. Sam sounds like Saul's grandpa, indeed. And the final IM of the day, Jack from Chicago. Trump trading cards are advertised on dinner menus at Mar-a-Lago. Bradley, Matt, great job today. Emma in absentia. Emma will be here tomorrow. I will see you on Friday.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes you? Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. The months drifted into years while I shifted in and out.